you just don't turn it off like you turn a light going out of a room, With me and a majority of Vietnam veterans, we left country, and 36 hours later we were standing in the front room of our parents' house or our wife's house or whatever, with no debriefing, no nothing. Thank you very much. Now go home. Goodbye. Well, your attitude, even though, now that you're not allowed to carry a gun anymore, your attitude doesn't necessarily change simply because you are no longer in harm's way.
I came back to what we call the world. That's what we've referred to coming back here to the States as the world. And for the first year, I was in complete or almost utter seclusion on my own part. I didn't talk to people about what I'd done. I lived very quietly up here in the hills on my family's ranch in a little shed that I remodeled. And I did gardening and outdoor jobs. And I think I was in a very strange place at the time because I wasn't having nightmares. I recalled a lot of things, but I became angrier and angrier at the country.
It's something that I'm kind of ashamed to say, but after I left Vietnam, I would say it was 25 years later before I even finally caught up with a guy that I was in Vietnam with, and looked at him face to face and talked about it and stuff.
It was something I was kind of ashamed of for a long time, and now I'm saying, you know what? That's what I did. That's who I am. On the one hand, I'm not proud. On the other hand, I'm very proud. I served my country. I don't like what we did or had to do.
There was times when I would be in a hole with snakes, rats, dead people. And think about it. What human being would do it? And that's why, what I said, you're in some kind of a combat mode. You don't think of the reality. You don't think of what you're doing. You just do what you have to do.
I came back to an attitude generally that almost made me ashamed to say I'd been there. And it took a long while to get over that. I guess that's the biggest thing I've had to get over, was not so much what I saw in country, but what I saw in the United States when I got back. It was very discouraging to me as an individual.
When I went over, like in 1966, it wasn't too bad then, no. But I think when I got back out in 67, the times had changed real quickly. In 1 year, it was hard to realize how the attitude of everyone in the younger generation changed so much, and yet it's my generation too. It was very hard to accept at times. Even my own sisters at times gave me a hard time and kind of like, why did you go there? I had no choice, and that was it.
I came from one of those families where the TV was on while you were eating supper, and they'd be watching the news, and I would see choppers landing and picking up casualties, and and everybody just like keep talking and eating, cutting up their steaks or whatever, and I just didn't fit anymore. I just didn't feel like I belonged.
I came in on one of these big planes, transporters, and they actually, instead of bringing us into the terminal, as a group, as a Marine, proud to come back, they sift us in, one at a time. And they told us to meet our liaison outside the terminal, away from all the people that were there. Because they were just, they were demonstrators. It was so different. I got put in a bus and taken right to the hospital. But there was nobody there to say, welcome back. There was none of that. I think the biggest mistake that our government made was not bring us into some kind of a rehabilitation area, to help us come home. There was none of that.
I came back to people flashing the peace sign and labeling us with terms that were totally inaccurate. And I was just generally angry. And if the subject of Vietnam came up, I usually bristled up and was ready for fight. And that was just the attitude at the time. It was a very unpopular war. Not that any war is popular, but I think that the politicians and the media did us a very serious injustice and really hurt a lot of good military people, caused a lot of good military people to get out of the military, and that could have served their country very well for many years yet.
In Vietnam, we saw the truth about war on TV. I mean, people, could turn on their TV and see the wounded and see the Vietnamese who were, desperate from losing a loved child. I mean, the classic, the mom holding the dead baby or something. And that did turn people against war, but it wasn't the media per se. It was learning the truth about war that made people against war.
Millions of Vietnamese died during the war. Military, civilian. The United States lost about 58,000 combat troops, another 250,000 wounded. And it tore the country apart because it became apparent that the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was predicated on a falsification of facts. The Maddox probably was not fired on, and the Maddox was in Vietnamese waters. The men who fought there in Vietnam for the United States were better than the cause.